April 28, 1945, Berlin, Germany. The city was unrecognizable, swallowed by its own fire. Streets once lined with trams and laughter were now trenches of ash and twisted steel. The air stank of cordite and smoke. Bells that once called the faithful now hung cracked and silent. Amid the ruins of St. Matthias Church, a lone sniper climbed toward the heavens that no longer answered. His name was Klaus Ritter, 29 years old, soldier of a dying Reich, a man with nothing left to lose. Each step creaked beneath him, wood and stone crumbling into the inferno below. The sky outside burned orange, the color of defeat. From this tower, he could see what was left of Berlin, a broken skeleton lit by artillery flashes. And somewhere beyond the smoke, the Red Army moved closer every hour. If you love stories like this, real courage, real history, then don't just watch, become part of it. Subscribe now to WWII Frontline Legends and stand with the people who keep this history alive. Every like, every share, every comment helps us honor those who lived these moments and shows your support for the hard work that goes into bringing these forgotten stories back to life. So hit that subscribe button, join our community, and tell us where you're watching from. Together, we're not just remembering history, we're keeping it alive. Klaus reached the belfry. The great bronze bell hung above him like a ghost of faith, its sides blackened by flame. He knelt, breathing hard, setting down his carabiner 98K rifle. He looked through the cracked scope and saw nothing but blur. Shattered glass. Useless. His one lifeline gone. He closed his eyes for a moment. He could almost hear his father's voice from long ago, echoing through the black forest of his childhood. If your eyes fail you, trust the line, Klaus. Always trust the line. He turned and saw it, the church bell rope, swinging gently in the rising heat, its fibers glowing amber. Desperation breeds invention. He drew his knife, cut 2 sections, and tied them across the arched window, one horizontal, one vertical, forming a cross of frayed hemp. A crude, trembling crosshair. He steadied his rifle on the sill. Smoke rolled through the opening, stinging his eyes. In the street below, Soviet infantry advanced between wrecked trams, their shadows stretching long through the firelight. Klaus breathed with the sway of the ropes. He exhaled. Fired. The first man dropped. A second shot, another fell. A third, silence, then shouting. Through that improvised rope sight, Klaus became death's quiet craftsman. Each pull of the trigger found its mark as if guided by unseen hands. Down below, panic spread among the Soviets. They couldn't see him. The church tower glowed red like an omen against the sky, and still, the shots came. For 40 minutes, he held them. One man, one rifle, one length of rope. But as he reloaded again, a whisper echoed from below the stairs. Not the crackle of fire, a human voice. Faint, hoarse, speaking. German. Klaus froze. He gripped his rifle and turned. Who's there? No reply, only coughing. He descended a few steps, rifle drawn. Amid rubble and dust lay a man in a torn Soviet uniform, blood pooling beneath his arm. He raised one trembling hand. Nick Skiason, he rasped. Don't shoot. The man's face was young, barely 20. His name tag read Volkov Mikhail. And to Klaus's astonishment, he spoke German fluently, better than some Berliners. I studied here, he murmured. At the university, before all this. For a long moment, neither moved. 2 soldiers from opposing worlds, trapped together in a dying cathedral. Fire roared below them, dust falling like snow. Klaus lowered his rifle slightly. The code of the sniper said no mercy. But mercy, he thought, was all that separated man from the monster. He tore a strip from his sleeve and wrapped the soldier's wound. You shouldn't be here, he said. Mikhail smiled faintly. Neither should you. Klaus returned to the window. His rope sight quivered in the heat. The Soviets were regrouping. Tanks now. If they broke through Alexanderplatz by dawn, Berlin would fall completely. He chambered another round. Stay quiet, he told Mikhail. We'll both be dead soon if they find us. Outside, a shell exploded, shaking the tower. Plaster rained down. Klaus steadied himself and fired again. One shot, one kill. He didn't miss. Not once. Down below, Soviet soldiers began shouting about a ghost in the bell tower. Some swore they saw 2 ropes glowing in the firelight, forming a cross of flame. Others said the sniper wasn't human at all, that the devil himself guarded the church. Hours passed. Night bled into deeper night. The rope burned at its edges but held. Klaus's fingers blistered, his lungs filled with smoke. And still he stayed. Duty, pride, guilt, maybe redemption. Every man fights for something different in the end. If stories like this move you, if you feel history still breathing in the smoke of these forgotten battles, take a second to join our community of history lovers here at WWII Frontline Legends. Subscribe right now, drop a like, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from around the world. I read every single one, from Texas to London, from Sydney to Toronto. You're all part of keeping these stories alive. Now back to the tower. As midnight approached, Klaus reloaded his final clip. He thought of his sister, Elsa, whom he hadn't heard from in over a year. He used to imagine she was hiding somewhere safe, maybe with their aunt in Dresden. But when the Soviets arrived, he'd heard rumors, terrible rumors, of executions in the city square. He'd buried that thought deep. Until now. Behind him, Mikhail stirred. His breathing grew ragged. "I know that name," he whispered suddenly. Klaus turned. "What name?" "Elsa Ritter," Mikhail said. She worked at the bakery near Friedrichstrasse." Klaus froze. "How do you know that?" Mikhail looked away, eyes wet with pain. "I was there when the order came, the civilians, your sister." The words hung like shrapnel in the air. "What did you do?" Klaus asked quietly. "I refused," Mikhail whispered. "That's why they shot me." Klaus stared at him, heart pounding. Could he believe this? Was this man confessing or lying to survive? He turned back to the window, the ropes swaying before him, blurring through tears and smoke. He fired again, not at the enemy, but to drown out the memory. Outside, the Soviets halted their advance once more. One tower, one phantom, still holding them at bay. The fire climbed higher. Sparks rained down the stairwell like molten stars. Klaus looked back at Mikhail, whose eyes were closing. "If you're lying," he said, "may God judge you before I can." But deep down, he knew it didn't matter. In war, truth burns with everything else. The bell above began to crack from the heat, its tone deep and haunting. It was as if the church itself mourned. And somewhere beyond the horizon, artillery thundered like the heartbeat of a dying world. Klaus adjusted his aim again. He whispered to himself, "Trust the line." He breathed in, held it, and fired. The scene dissolved into flame and echo. The night deepened, and Berlin burned brighter than day. The streets were rivers of flame, buildings collapsing in slow, sorrowful rhythm. Artillery boomed from the east, the Red Army tightening its iron grip on the last defenders of the city. Above it all, the shattered silhouette of St. Matthias Church stood defiant, its bell tower burning like a torch against the dark. Inside, Klaus Ritter reloaded his rifle with trembling hands. His ears rang from the constant gunfire, his skin glistened with sweat and soot. Each breath came with the taste of ash. Below him, the wounded Soviet scout Mikhail Volkov whispered feverishly, drifting in and out of consciousness. Klaus had stopped trying to make sense of right and wrong. The city around him was proof that both had long since been buried under rubble. Yet the words Mikhail had spoken, the name of his sister, Elsa, refused to leave his mind. They circled him like ghosts. "Elsa Ritter," he muttered, half to himself. "How would you know her?" Mikhail stirred, eyes glassy. "She tried to protect a child. They shot her in front of the bakery. I was there." Klaus froze. The rifle slipped slightly from his hands. "You expect me to believe you?" he said. "I tried to stop it," Mikhail rasped. "I was no hero. But I couldn't let them." He coughed, blood on his lips. "I told her to run." Silence filled the burning tower. Klaus stared out through his rope sight, his finger hovering over the trigger, but his heart no longer beat for the war. His mind was miles away, in a quiet Berlin morning 2 years before, when Elsa had waved goodbye to him at the train station. She had promised to write. She never did. Now he understood why. Outside, the Soviet soldiers regrouped under cover of night. Their commander barked orders, pointing toward the church. The sniper had to be silenced. The Red Army artillery turned its barrels toward St. Matthias. Klaus adjusted his ropes, the cross glowing faintly in the flickering firelight. He whispered to himself, "One more shot." The shell struck before he could fire. The explosion shook the entire district. The bell tower groaned, stones cracking like bones. The great bronze bell tore loose and crashed through the floor below. The blast hurled Klaus backward. Dust and smoke swallowed everything. His rifle flew from his hands. He tasted blood, felt heat, heard only the echo of his own heartbeat. When the ringing in his ears faded, he realized he was still alive, barely. The rope sight was gone, burned away. Flames licked the floorboards around him. The air shimmered with heat. He crawled toward the stairs, shouting through the smoke. "Volkov, are you alive?" A faint answer came from below. "Here. I'm here." Klaus descended, choking on the thick black air. He found Mikhail pinned beneath a collapsed beam. His leg was crushed, his face pale as chalk. Klaus tried to lift the beam, but it wouldn't budge. "Leave me," Mikhail gasped. "Save yourself." Klaus ignored him. He searched for leverage, a plank, a crowbar, anything, but found only burning debris. The fire was spreading fast now. Flames reached the staircase, swallowing what little path remained. Outside, the distant rumble of tanks grew louder. Mikhail grabbed Klaus's arm. "Listen to me. I wasn't lying. I saw her die. She said your name before." "Stop," Klaus shouted. "Don't you dare say it." But Mikhail continued, voice trembling. "She forgave you. For leaving. She said, 'Tell him I understand.'" Klaus froze. The noise of the battle outside faded into nothing. For a moment, he felt weightless, detached from time itself. The war, the uniforms, the hatred, all of it seemed meaningless. He looked down at Mikhail, an enemy, a stranger, and felt something unfamiliar. Mercy. He tore open his canteen and pressed it to Mikhail's lips. "Drink," he said. The tower trembled again. A second shell hit nearby. Dust rained from above like snow. Klaus looked upward. The roof was splitting open, exposing the stars beyond the smoke. "We have to move," he shouted. Mikhail shook his head. "You can't carry me. Go." Klaus hesitated. For the first time since the war began, he didn't know what the right decision was. To leave meant life. To stay meant death. But to leave Mikhail, the man who had tried to stop the killing, who had spoken his sister's last words, was something he couldn't bear. He pulled again at the beam, muscles straining. "Hold on," he growled. And then came the sound no soldier forgets, the distant whistle of incoming artillery. The final strike. He turned toward the window and saw the flash before the sound. The blast ripped through the tower. Everything went white. When the dust settled, there was no sound at all. No fire. No shouting. Just the hiss of wind through broken stone. Hours later, when the Soviets entered the ruins, they found the church reduced to a skeleton. Smoke rose from the rubble like a dying prayer. Beneath the collapsed beams, they discovered a single survivor, a Soviet scout barely conscious. His dog tags read Mikhail Volkov. Clutched in his hand was a scorched piece of rope tied in a cross. The soldiers searched the rest of the wreckage for the sniper, but there was no sign of him. No body. No rifle. Only the blackened bell, cracked down the middle, lying half-buried in ash. One soldier swore he heard something, a faint metallic ring, like the bell echoing from nowhere. Another said he saw footprints leading toward the catacombs below the church. But when they searched the tunnels, they found nothing but smoke and silence. In the chaos of war, men vanish easily. But legends, they don't die so quietly. In the following days, word spread among Soviet troops. They spoke of the ghost of St. Matthias, a sniper who had defied death, who fought with a cross of rope and vanished into the fire. Some said he was a spirit protecting the church. Others believed he had escaped, haunting the ruins still. For Mikhail Volkov, the story didn't end there. When he awoke in a makeshift field hospital days later, an officer questioned him. "You were the only survivor," the officer said. "How did you live?" Mikhail didn't answer. He simply reached into his pocket and pulled out something, a small, burned piece of metal. It was a German dog tag. The name stamped on it, Klaus Ritter. The officer frowned. "Where did you get that?" Mikhail looked away. "He saved me." The officer laughed. "A German sniper saved you? You must have lost your mind." But Mikhail only closed his fist around the tag. "No," he said quietly. He lost his. That night, as Mikhail drifted in and out of fever dreams, he swore he could hear a bell ringing faintly through the cold Berlin air, followed by a single rifle shot. He sat up, gasping, but the camp was silent. The sound had come from the direction of St. Matthias. Whether it was real or not, he never told anyone. The Soviet officers marked Klaus Ritter as presumed dead. The church was cleared and sealed. Yet among the ruins, rumors persisted. Locals whispered that sometimes, on windless nights, the bell would toll by itself, one low, haunting note. And if you listened closely afterward, you could hear the faint echo of a rifle firing in the distance. May 8, 1945, Victory Day. The guns fell silent. Berlin lay in ruins, the ashes of an empire drifting through the smoke-filled air. Among the collapsed spires and shattered monuments, St. Matthias Church stood like a scar, its bell tower gone, its roof open to the gray spring sky. The war was over, but peace had not yet arrived. Weeks passed. The Red Army took control of the city, clearing bodies, recording names, searching for the living among the dead. It was then that an intelligence officer named Major Leonid Kozlov began to investigate rumors about a sniper who had held off an entire Soviet battalion from a burning bell tower. Kozlov had heard stories before, tales of ghosts and miracles, but something about this one refused to fade. Witnesses described impossible marksmanship. Dozens of Soviet troops had fallen from clean, single shots to the chest, not random fire, but surgical precision. And yet no sniper rifle had been found in the rubble. Kozlov visited the ruins himself. He walked through the nave, where sunlight streamed through holes in the roof, illuminating dust like drifting snow. On the charred stones near the altar, he found something odd, a length of rope fused into the bell's metal. The fibers were blackened but intact, melted into the bronze as though sealed there by intention, not accident. He picked it up carefully and turned to his aide. "Take this to the lab," he said, "and find me the man named Volkov." 2 days later, Kozlov interviewed Private Mikhail Volkov, now recovering in a field hospital. The young soldier's face was drawn, his eyes hollow, but his story was steady. "The sniper's name was Klaus Ritter," he said. "He saved my life." "Why would a German sniper save a Soviet scout?" Kozlov asked. Mikhail stared out the window, where the city smoldered under rain. "Because for a moment we weren't enemies. We were just men caught between orders and conscience." Kozlov leaned forward. "And you're certain he died?" Mikhail hesitated. "I heard the tower collapse. But sometimes, I hear the bell at night. One ring, then silence." The major frowned but said nothing. He closed his notebook and left, certain that trauma had blurred the soldier's mind. Still, that night, Kozlov dreamed of a burning cross made of rope swaying in the dark. Months later, as Berlin was divided among the Allies, reports began surfacing. Soviet patrols near Alexanderplatz claimed they'd seen a lone figure moving among the ruins, carrying a rifle wrapped in canvas. Locals said he visited the church at night, lighting a candle and vanishing before dawn. No one ever caught him. But the legend grew, the ghost of St. Matthias, the sniper who refused to die. The second twist came not in Berlin, but in Munich 2 years later. An Allied officer cataloging confiscated weapons opened a crate marked Unknown Origin, Berlin sector. Inside lay a rusted Karabiner 98K rifle. On the stock, carved faintly by knife, were 2 words, "For Elsa." The rifle's barrel was warped by heat, but the trigger still moved smoothly, cleanly, as if oiled recently. The officer noted it in the report, unaware that the name would later match a casualty list from the Friedrichstrasse bakery massacre. When historians studied the weapon decades later, they found trace fibers in the sights, hemp rope, charred but preserved. Tests confirmed it matched the same material fused into the bell at St. Matthias. No one could explain how the rifle had traveled from Berlin to Munich. Some believed Klaus Ritter survived the tower's collapse, escaping through the catacombs beneath the church. Others claimed Mikhail Volkov, racked by guilt, carried the weapon himself to honor the man who had spared him. But Volkov never spoke of it again. He disappeared in 1949, last seen boarding a train east toward Moscow. The ruins of St. Matthias were eventually cleared. The bell was restored and rehung in a new tower, its surface still bearing the faint scars of melted rope. Locals said it rang differently, a deeper tone, as if mourning what had been lost. In 1961, when the Berlin Wall rose, dividing the city once more, an old woman who lived nearby swore she saw a figure standing beneath the bell tower one foggy night. He wore a long coat, his face hidden, and he carried a rifle slung across his back. When she called out to him, he turned, nodded once, and vanished into the mist. Police found only footprints leading toward the old underground tunnels, the same catacombs rumored to have saved the sniper 16 years earlier. No one ever proved it was him. But when the woman was shown an old photograph of Klaus Ritter, taken before the war, she began to cry. "It was the eyes," she said. "He looked like a man who'd been waiting too long to be found." Time washed over Berlin like rain over stone. By the 1980s, the story of the rope sight sniper had become folklore, whispered among soldiers, retold by historians, and occasionally dismissed as a ghost tale for tourists. But then a photograph emerged from Soviet archives, a grainy black and white image labeled captured from German position. April 1945. It showed the inside of a bell tower. Two ropes, crossed in the window, glowing faintly through smoke. Experts argued for years over whether it was genuine or staged propaganda. No one could agree. But the image became famous, a symbol of ingenuity and desperation in the final days of the Reich. What no one noticed until much later was a faint reflection in the glass of the tower window, the blurred outline of a man standing behind the ropes, eyes fixed on something beyond the frame. Mikhail Volkov died in 1967. Among his possessions, his grandson later discovered a small tin box. Inside were two items, a faded field map of Berlin and a scorched German dog tag engraved Klaus Ritter. Attached to it was a note, written in shaky Cyrillic. He aimed through rope, but saw through truth. Forgive me. The grandson donated the artifacts to a war museum, where they remain on display today. Visitors often stop before the exhibit and stare at the relics, the rope fragment, the dog tag, the photo of the ruined bell tower, and wonder whether Klaus had truly died that night, or whether the man who vanished into the smoke lived on as a ghost of conscience in a city split by walls and wounds. Every year, on the anniversary of the Battle of Berlin, the bell of St. Matthias rings once at midnight. The clergy say it's tradition, but locals tell a different story, that no one actually pulls the rope. And sometimes, when the wind dies and the city grows still, a single rifle shot echoes faintly through the night, bouncing off the old stone streets. No one knows from where. Maybe it's memory. Maybe it's something else. But one thing is certain. In the inferno that consumed Berlin, a man once turned a frayed rope into a weapon of precision, and in doing so, blurred forever the line between skill and faith, duty and redemption, life and legend. If this story stirred something in you, if you felt the weight of history breathing through every shot from that burning tower, you're one of us. You keep the memory of these forgotten heroes alive. Backhand index pointing right. Subscribe now to WWII Frontline Legends, where every week we bring back the untold stories of courage, ingenuity, and sacrifice that shaped our world. Hit that like button, share this video with someone who still believes bravery matters, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from Texas, London, Manila, or Berlin itself. I read every single one, because history doesn't fade when we remember together. This is WWII Frontline Legends, keeping their stories alive, one shot, one heartbeat, one legend at a time.